Coming up, removing the two-child cap on universal credit and social security would cost the government £2.5 billion this year, according to the Resolution Foundation, and would alleviate deep poverty for over 1 million children. But we're told that we can't afford £2.5 billion. But apparently we can afford Brexit, which costs the UK £32 billion a year, according to the Office of Budget Responsibility. It's so obvious that the Labour government needs to ditch Brexit, which is proving to be a drag anchor on the British economy. But is it likely to happen? And what would the process look like? Stay tuned. I loved the latest unhinged headline from The Express this week. Outrage as Labour makes crazy move in plot to bring UK closer to EU. This is a story about Labour's plans to shake up the structure of the behind-the-scenes parliamentary select committees that do a lot of the heavy lifting of work in government. The crazy move The Express are being all snowflakey about? Well, Lucy Powell, the leader of the House of Commons, has announced that the EU Scrutiny Committee, longtime bastion of the swivel-eyed Tory Brexiteer European Research Group, will be axed. The Express fumes. Despite the government now moving to reopen Brexit talks altogether and renegotiate the UK's relationship with the continent, Ms Powell moved to abolish the committee entirely. So there you have it. According to the oh-so-reliable, non-partisan Express, Starmer's government is already reopening Brexit talks and renegotiating the UK's relationship with the continent. So is there any truth in this report? Well, in July, our new EU Relations Minister, Nick Thomas-Symonds, went to Brussels to meet the bloc's Vice President, Maros Šefčovič, for initial face-to-face talks to set the stage for future discussions. The mood music coming out of these talks was that the European Union side were relieved to be dealing with a competent government that wasn't hostile to the whole EU project, that was looking to increase ties and improve the relationship after years of bad faith negotiations and those damaging Tory threats over a no-deal Brexit. Thomas-Symonds told Šefčovič that the Labour government is determined to improve upon the botched deal eventually struck by Boris Johnson with the EU. But mood music really doesn't matter much. Keir Starmer has recently redrawn red lines over freedom of movement, the customs union and the single market, and so it's hard to see how any real progress could be made with those restrictions in place. Sure, he's repeated promises to renegotiate the UK's deal with the European Union and to create a new security pact, but at the same time, his government has just rejected a youth mobility deal with Spain, which could have seen young people regaining their pre-Brexit rights to live, work and study in that country. He's also ruled out a similar agreement with the EU as a whole, despite Brussels making it clear that one is still on the table. All very frustrating. But there may be some grounds for optimism. But before I share this better news with you, perhaps you'd be so kind as to leave a comment, give this video a like, share a link on your social media, or hit the bell and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. So what are the chances of a complete reset in the relationship between the UK and the EU, and what does that mean for Brexit? Well, the Irish Prime Minister, Simon Harris, who's expected to be an ally of the UK in any peeling back of Brexit, has described the election of the new government as a potential game changer for the bloc. With the Olympics happening right now as I record this video, Starmer is using the opportunity to meet up with leaders of other EU member countries too, in order to re-establish friendly relationships and get a commitment to his proposed security pact, which has been dubbed as a post-Brexit megadeal. Although it's being referred to as a security pact, it's actually a lot more to it than that. The proposals aren't just about security cooperation, but a whole range of other stuff too, from rules around agriculture to student exchange programmes. Germany's ambassador to the UK, Miguel Berger, told Politico, "We very much welcome the initiative of a security pact. It's not only security, it's broader. So I would call it a security and cooperation agreement between the UK and the European Union." He added, "We have a headline, which is security and cooperation, and beneath that, we think we should look for areas which are in the common interest." Meanwhile, Starmer is still insisting for now that I don't think we should ignore the referendum and go back into the EU. But the number of pro-EU MPs wishing to eventually reapply for EU membership has ballooned following the general election, with the pro-Brexit ranks massively reduced with the collapse of the Tory parliamentary party, despite the arrivals of 5 Reform UK Party Limited Ponzi scheme MPs. This massive shift in Parliament towards an overwhelmingly pro-EU stance is already seeing pressure being put on Starmer to address Brexit and the massive drain on public finances that it represents. For example, new MP for Leeds North West, Katie White, asked Keir Starmer in response to a recent Commons statement he made, does he agree that the shifting relationship with the European Union, led by the previous government, has indeed made us economically poorer and undermined small business? Andrew Lewin, the Labour MP who defeated former Defence Secretary, the multiple personality disordered Grant Shapps, added, it is a regret that the deal signed by the party opposite, the Tories, when they were in government, did real damage to our economy. They put up barriers to the European Union and increased red tape. Now is the time for a new relationship and to take practical measures to increase our alignment with the European Union. A number of other new and veteran Labour MPs have said similar things in Parliament since Labour came back to power, and that pressure will only grow over time. And it's not just a majority of MPs. New polling shows that those MPs align with the majority of Labour voters. A recent Think voter intention poll shows that the vast majority of Labour voters want the party to drop its Brexit red lines and reverse the Tory legacy on Europe. Asked about whether Labour should reconsider its stance on the single market, customs union and freedom of movement in order to gain economic benefit, 71% thought they should. Just 14% thought they should not alter their Brexit red line stance, with only 2% saying definitely not. Yet Starmer is still insisting that the UK will not rejoin the EU in his lifetime. Plus, that he will not consider rejoining the customs union or single market. And look, I understand that Labour felt it needed to set out these clear intentions regarding Brexit to protect itself from attacks from the Tories and the pro-Brexit media during the election. But now, in their honeymoon phase and with a massive Commons majority, what better time to decide to better reflect the will and desire of not just Labour's voting base, but also the public at large, who wish to see Brexit undone as far as possible. In that same Think voter intention poll, 63% of Labour voters would vote to rejoin in a new referendum against only 18% who'd vote to stay out. And across all voters, 47% say that they would vote to rejoin against 34% who said they'd vote to stay out. In my opinion, Starmer has to, for want of a better expression, consider the will of the people and be prepared to withdraw his red lines if he can strike a better deal with the European Union on freedom of movement, the single market or the customs union. And look, I fully understand that a decision on membership of the EU is not the UK's decision to make anymore. But the EU has already shown itself to be willing to offer up freedom of movement for UK citizens under a certain age and to enter discussions on how to ease trade between the two parties. After years of underfunding, the British military has been allowed to atrophy. But even now, the value of British forces in any pan-European security pact could ease the way to agreements in other spheres. At the moment, that proposed security pact, which has been so warmly received by the Irish, the Germans and the French, could turn out to be a post-Brexit mega deal, which, while not overturning Brexit just yet, looks likely to represent the first nail in its coffin.